Story 1. The Girls Who Glowed. In 1917, a job opening at the United States Radium Corporation in Orange, New Jersey was considered desirable. The pay was good. The work was delicate. The factory hired young women, some as young as 14, to paint the faces of military watches and instrument dials with a luminous radium-based paint called Undark. The supervisors gave them a specific instruction: point your brush with your lips. The technique was called lip pointing. A fine brush loaded with radium paint placed in the mouth to bring it to a sharp tip. Over and over, hundreds of times per shift. The women were told the paint was harmless. Some of the women painted their nails with it, their teeth, their faces. They wore their work home on their skin and their clothes, glowing faintly in the dark. They found it amusing. They had been told it was safe. The executives knew otherwise. Internal documents, later produced in court proceedings, confirm that the United States Radium Corporation was fully aware of radium's dangers. Executives wore lead shielding. They handled the material with care. They shielded themselves while instructing their employees to place it in their mouths. By the early 1920s, the women began to get sick. Teeth fell out without explanation. Jawbones softened and fractured. Holes formed in skulls. Legs broke from the inside. One woman's entire jaw was removed by a doctor who described it in his notes as coming away in his hand. The company's response was documented. They hired their own physicians to examine the workers and report that the illnesses were unrelated to radium. They pressured doctors to list alternative causes of death on official records. They denied, delayed, and suppressed. 5 of the women sued. By the time the case reached settlement in 1928, several of the plaintiffs were dying. Some could not lift their arms. One could not turn her head. They signed the settlement documents in whatever position they could.
Story 2. The Bell Underground. The fear of being buried alive is not irrational. In the 18th and 19th centuries, it was documented. People were buried in states of coma, catalepsy, and extreme illness. Medical science did not yet have reliable methods to confirm death. The heartbeat could not always be detected. Breathing could be entirely imperceptible. The medical literature of the period is filled with accounts. A woman in New York, buried after an apparent fever, found with scratch marks on the underside of her coffin lid when her grave was exhumed years later. A German nobleman, exhumed for reburial, discovered with his knees drawn up to his chest. A French soldier, buried after a battle, who revived on the embalming table. These accounts spread, and they created a specific, documented terror. Taphophobia, the fear of being buried alive. The response was engineering. Safety coffins began appearing across Europe in the 1790s. The designs varied, but the principle was the same. A cord was threaded from inside the coffin, up through the earth, and connected to a bell mounted at the surface. If the buried person revived, they would pull the cord. The bell would ring, and someone would come. Some designs included air tubes. Others included flags that would rise automatically. Count Michel de Karnicki, a Russian nobleman, patented a device in 1897 that would respond to the slightest movement, opening an air tube, activating a signal lamp, and ringing a bell simultaneously. Entire waiting mortuaries were constructed in Germany. Bodies were stored for several days before burial. Strings were tied to their fingers, connected to bells in a monitoring room. Attendants sat through the night, listening. There is no confirmed case on record of a safety coffin bell ever being rung by a revived occupant. What that silence means has never been agreed upon. If you find yourself watching this at midnight, unable to stop, you are exactly the kind of person we make these videos for. We are here every week. Hit subscribe. We'll be waiting.
Story 3. The Murder Trade. In 1828, the Edinburgh Medical College required human bodies for anatomical research. British law permitted only the bodies of executed criminals to be used for dissection. There were not enough executions to meet demand. The solution came from outside the law. Body snatching became an industry. Fresh graves were opened at night. Bodies were removed before dawn and sold to medical schools. Grieving families began burying their dead under iron cages called mort safes to prevent the theft. Guards were posted at graveyards. Watchtowers were constructed. William Hare ran a lodging house in Edinburgh's West Port district. William Burke was his tenant. When one of Hare's lodgers died of natural causes in November 1827, the two men sold the body to a private anatomy lecturer named Dr. Robert Knox. They received £7 and 10 shillings. It was not enough. They did not wait for natural deaths. Over the following 10 months, Burke and Hare murdered at least 16 people, primarily the poor, the elderly, the transient, people whose disappearance would not be immediately reported. They used a method called burking, pressing down on the nose and mouth to suffocate the victim without leaving visible marks on the body. The corpses were sold to Dr. Knox, who received them and asked no questions. They were discovered when another lodger found a body concealed beneath straw in a room. Hare testified against Burke in exchange for immunity. He was released and vanished into anonymity. Burke was hanged in January 1829 before a crowd of 25,000 people. His body was then sent for public anatomical dissection, the same fate he had delivered to others. His skeleton was placed on display at the University of Edinburgh Medical School. It remains there today. His skin was tanned and made into a pocketbook. That also remains on display. The next story involves women, not murderers, not criminals. Women who were committed to asylums for offences that were not crimes.
Story 4. The Convenient Diagnosis. Throughout the 19th century, admission records at psychiatric institutions across Britain and the United States document the following reasons for commitment: novel reading, excessive religious enthusiasm, political excitement, domestic trouble, grief, disobedience to a husband, the desire to leave a marriage. These were listed under a category called moral insanity, a diagnosis that required no physical symptom, no behavioral observation by a medical professional, and no legal proceeding. A husband's testimony was sufficient. A father's word was sufficient. A single physician's signature was often sufficient. A woman could be committed in the morning. She could be permanently institutionalized by evening. The conditions inside varied. Some institutions were understaffed facilities operating under the guise of treatment. Others offered genuine, if often misguided, medical care. But for many women, admission was not followed by treatment. It was followed by indefinite confinement. Elizabeth Packard was committed in 1860 by her husband, a Presbyterian minister in Illinois, after she publicly disagreed with his theological views during a Sunday school class. She was held for 3 years without trial. Upon her release, she campaigned for legal reform and succeeded in changing the commitment laws of Illinois, Massachusetts, and several other states. Her case is documented. Her husband never faced consequences. One admission entry from the Utica State Lunatic Asylum in New York reads simply, "Cause of insanity, suppression of menses, and disappointment." No further clinical notes, no record of discharge.
Story 5. What they kept. When someone died in the Victorian era, the family cut their hair. This was not incidental, it was ritual. A lock of hair was cut from the deceased before burial, sometimes more. In some households, the hair from the entire head was preserved. The cut was made carefully, deliberately, while the body was still in the house. What happened next varied by family and by tradition. Some locks were sealed in lockets and worn daily against the skin. Some were braided into watch chains worn by widowers for the remainder of their lives. Some were enclosed in letters sent to relatives who had not been present at the death, so they could have something that had once been part of the person. Others became art. Hair wreaths were assembled in the homes of the grieving. Entire braided arrangements formed into flowers, leaves, and elaborate geometric patterns, assembled from the hair of multiple deceased family members, sometimes across generations. They were framed under glass and hung in parlors, displayed alongside family portraits as objects of equal importance. The hair of an infant who died in 1843, the hair of a grandmother who died in 1851, the hair of a father who died in the war, all braided together, all preserved. Museums across the United States still hold thousands of these objects. Most are not on display, most are in storage. What makes them difficult to classify is not their origin, it is their craftsmanship. These are objects made with extraordinary care. The braiding is technically complex. The arrangements are architecturally precise. Some required hundreds of hours of labor from the grieving hands that made them. They are simultaneously expressions of profound love and objects that most modern viewers cannot look at comfortably. The hair is still there. The people who grew it are not. 5 stories. 5 chapters of history that were suppressed, ignored, or deliberately buried by the people who benefited from them staying hidden. They are documented, verified, real, and yet most people have never heard them. History is not a record of everything that happened. It is a selection of what we chose to remember. And what we choose to remember tells us far more about ourselves than the things we buried. Drop a comment and tell me which of these 5 disturbed you the most. We are unpredictable. See you in the dark.